In today's video, we dive into one of Africa's most silent but devastating crises, the quiet departure of its brightest minds. It's a phenomenon known as brain drain, and it's reshaping the future of the continent in ways many don't yet understand. Across Africa, from Lagos to Nairobi, from Accra to Johannesburg, a quiet migration is taking place. Doctors, engineers, teachers, researchers, and other professionals, some of the most educated and skilled young Africans, are leaving their home countries in search of better opportunities abroad. For many, this isn't just about ambition, it's about survival. It's about finding stability, safety, and dignity in a world where their dreams often feel too big for the systems they were born into. Every year, thousands of doctors leave Nigeria for the United Kingdom, Canada, and the United States. In Kenya, teachers and nurses cross borders to seek better pay and improved working conditions. In Ghana and South Africa, researchers and university lecturers migrate, frustrated by low salaries and lack of funding for their work. Behind these departures lies a deeper problem, a system that fails to nurture talent, reward innovation, or support dreams. Unemployment rates remain painfully high. Corruption eats into public resources, and political instability discourages long-term investment. The irony is heartbreaking. The same governments that invest heavily in education often end up losing the very minds they help to create. The best-trained doctors and engineers, educated with public funds, end up building the economies of other nations. It becomes a silent donation, a transfer of intellect and skill from the poorest continent to the richest. Africa's loss becomes the world's gain. But this isn't just about numbers or data. It's about real people. The nurse who leaves her rural clinic because she hasn't been paid for months. The young engineer who dreams of starting Africa's next big tech company but can't find investors or reliable electricity. The researcher who leaves because his lab doesn't even have basic equipment. Each story tells of frustration, lost dreams, and the painful decision to walk away from home. And yet, amid the heartbreak, there is still hope. Across Africa, new movements are rising. Diaspora networks are helping professionals contribute remotely to their home countries. Young Africans abroad are investing back home, mentoring local startups, and sharing knowledge across borders. Some governments are beginning to rethink their policies, offering incentives for professionals to return, investing in innovation hubs, and creating environments where talent can finally thrive. Because at the heart of this issue lies a simple truth: the true wealth of Africa isn't in its minerals, oil, or gold. It's in its people, the thinkers, dreamers, and creators who hold the power to change everything. If Africa can build systems that reward merit, support innovation, and restore faith in governance, the tide can still turn. Africa's brain drain is not just a story of migration, it's a story of lost faith. It's about whether the continent can convince its people that home is still worth believing in. Until that faith is restored, the best of Africa will keep leaving, searching for a future that should have been theirs right where they were born. But perhaps, just perhaps, if we begin to invest not only in roads and skyscrapers, but in education, creativity, and opportunity, if we choose to believe in our own potential, the story can change. The future can still be written by those who once left and those who chose to stay. Africa's greatest power has always been its people. Let's not let that power fade away to the silence of lost hope. But to truly understand Africa's brain drain, we must look beyond the statistics and into the mindset it creates, a mindset shaped by frustration, broken promises, and a longing for dignity. For decades, many young Africans have been told to study hard, get degrees, and serve their countries. Yet when they do, the system often fails them. They watch their leaders live in luxury while hospitals crumble, schools lack books, and innovation is ignored. It's not that Africans don't love their homeland. It's that their homeland too often forgets to love them back. In the bustling streets of Lagos, a young medical student dreams not of serving in a local hospital, but of getting a placement in London. In Nairobi, a software developer writes code late into the night, hoping his talent will be recognized by a company in Berlin. And in Accra, a teacher who once inspired hundreds of students now prepares to leave for Canada, tired of a salary that can't sustain a family. Each of them represents a growing feeling across the continent, a feeling that opportunity is elsewhere. And yet, when these professionals leave, they don't just leave their countries, they leave behind families, communities, and potential futures. The hospitals lose skilled doctors. The schools lose passionate teachers. The economies lose innovators and taxpayers. What remains is a hollow space, one that money alone cannot fill. The tragedy of brain drain isn't only that people leave, it's that their departure becomes the dream of those who remain. Children grow up wanting to go abroad before they even understand what that means. Parents encourage it, believing it's the only way their children can escape poverty. It becomes a cycle that feeds itself, generation after generation. But this story doesn't have to end in despair. There are Africans abroad who are finding ways to reconnect. Some are building companies that employ people back home. Others are creating scholarship programs, mentoring young talents, and investing in education. Technology has made distance smaller, and hearts are starting to return even when bodies cannot. Countries like Rwanda and Ghana are already taking small but meaningful steps, creating policies to attract their diaspora, building innovation hubs, and showing that it's possible to turn brain drain into brain gain. And across the continent, there's a rising generation refusing to give up, young Africans who choose to stay, who choose to build, even when the odds are against them. They are the quiet heroes, the teacher who continues to inspire despite a small paycheck, the nurse who stays in her community hospital, the entrepreneur who believes Africa can still create global solutions. Their stories are rarely told, but they represent the flicker of hope that still burns across the continent. If that hope is nurtured, if African leaders begin to value their people the way other nations do, if corruption can be replaced with integrity, then perhaps the exodus will slow. And maybe one day, the dream of every young African will not be to leave, but to stay, because home finally feels like the best place to be. Until that day comes, the continent must keep fighting for its future, not just by reclaiming its resources, but by protecting its greatest treasure of all, its people. The story of Africa's brain drain is not just a story of migration. It's a story of lost dreams and untapped potential. It's the story of classrooms that once overflowed with hope now growing silent as their best students disappear into foreign lands. It's the story of hospitals struggling to operate because their doctors and nurses have moved abroad. It's the story of entire villages watching their youth vanish, leaving behind only the old and the very young. In some countries, the situation has become so severe that hospitals now rely on visiting doctors from overseas. Doctors who, ironically, are often African-born. Nations that once educated the world are now paying foreign agencies to fill the gaps left by their own people. It's a cruel twist of fate that the same continent that gave birth to such brilliance now finds itself begging for the very skills it once nurtured. And while the world praises African immigrants for their success abroad, calling them hardworking, disciplined, and talented, it rarely asks why they had to leave in the first place. Behind every success story of an African thriving overseas lies a story of frustration, rejection, and missed opportunities at home. Many who left never wanted to. They simply grew tired of waiting for change that never came. But perhaps the most painful part of this crisis is what it does to identity. When someone leaves home for too long, they begin to live between two worlds, never fully belonging to either. The nurse in London still dreams in Kiswahili or Yoruba. The engineer in Toronto still remembers the sound of the morning rooster back in his village. They carry Africa in their hearts, but Africa slowly forgets their faces. They build lives abroad, yet a piece of them remains forever unfulfilled. And for those who remain behind, there's an invisible burden. They must keep the systems running with fewer hands. Teachers teach larger classes, doctors work longer hours, innovation slows, and progress feels just out of reach. The few who choose to stay are often seen as the unlucky ones, when in truth they are the true patriots, the ones holding the continent together. Yet, even in this storm, hope still flickers. Across Africa, a quiet revolution is growing. Young people are creating their own opportunities, not waiting for governments or foreign aid. They are building tech startups in Lagos, renewable energy projects in Nairobi, and fashion brands in Accra that rival global labels. Social media and digital platforms are giving them global visibility and a voice they never had before. The internet has become the new bridge connecting the diaspora and those at home. A Kenyan developer in Berlin can now collaborate with a team in Mombasa. A Ghanaian scientist in the UK can mentor students in Accra. A Nigerian investor in New York can fund a local agricultural project back home. The same globalization that once drained Africa's talent can now help bring it back, digitally, emotionally, and economically. But for this to truly work, Africa must rebuild trust. Trust between the people and their governments, trust in education, trust in leadership. The greatest tragedy is not that people are leaving, but that they no longer believe their home can change. And that belief, or the lack of it, is what truly drains the continent. Because the future of Africa depends not just on keeping its people, but on giving them a reason to stay. A reason to believe that their hard work will pay off. A reason to know that their children will grow up in a fairer, freer, and more prosperous society. Imagine an Africa where a young doctor doesn't have to dream of Canada to live well, where a teacher doesn't need to move abroad to be respected, where an inventor can bring an idea to life without begging for permission or bribes. That Africa is possible, but it will require honesty, courage, and a new generation of leaders who see their people not as tools, but as treasures. The time has come for Africa to stop exporting its dreams and start building them at home. Because the story of brain drain is not destiny, it's a warning. And if that warning is heard, Africa can rise stronger and wiser, turning its loss into a lesson and its pain into power. But if we listen closely, there's another side to this story, one that reveals not just loss, but resilience. Because while millions have left, millions more have chosen to stay. They stay not because it's easy, but because they believe in something bigger than themselves. They believe in the dream of an Africa that can stand tall on its own feet. An Africa where children no longer dream of escaping, but of building. Every morning in Kampala, a young teacher walks to her classroom, knowing her pay won't come on time. Yet she shows up because she believes those students deserve a future. In Addis Ababa, a young entrepreneur fights to keep his small business alive despite power cuts and taxes, because he believes the solution must come from within. In Lagos, a doctor continues treating patients in an overcrowded hospital, knowing that every life he saves is a step toward a better tomorrow. These are the silent heroes of Africa's story, the ones who stay when leaving would have been easier. And then there are those who left but never truly left. The ones who carry Africa in their hearts wherever they go. They send money back home, build schools, fund small businesses, and tell the world that Africa is more than poverty and struggle, that it is a place of creativity, warmth, and resilience. These are the bridges between two worlds, the proof that even distance cannot erase identity. The truth is, Africa's brain drain can be reversed, not by force, but by faith. When leaders invest in education, when innovation is rewarded, and when hard work is honored, the tide begins to turn. It starts small, a few professionals returning home to start companies, researchers coming back to build labs, young people realizing they don't have to leave to succeed. And slowly, the idea of home transforms from a place of limitation to a place of opportunity. Across the continent, signs of change are beginning to emerge. Kigali is rising as a hub of innovation and technology. Nairobi's Silicon Savannah is attracting global investors. Lagos is producing world-class music, fashion, and digital startups that compete on the global stage. From Cairo to Cape Town, new generations are proving that Africa's brilliance doesn't need to be exported, it can shine right where it was born. But for this light to grow, the continent must first heal the wounds that caused its people to leave. Corruption must be confronted, not excused. Youth voices must be heard, not silenced. Systems must be built that serve the people, not exploit them. It is not enough to talk of patriotism. Africa must earn the loyalty of its people, because no one abandons home willingly. People leave when home stops feeling like home. The goal should not be to trap Africans within borders, but to make those borders a place of pride, a place worth coming back to. One day, the dream could change. Maybe a young child in Ghana will say, "I want to grow up and build my country," instead of "I want to leave it." Maybe a doctor in Nigeria will earn enough to stay and thrive. Maybe an engineer in Ethiopia will invent something the whole world uses. When that happens, brain drain will become brain gain. Africa has given the world its rhythm, its strength, its creativity. Now it's time for Africa to give itself a chance. The continent has lost many of its best, but the story isn't over. The next chapter is still being written, and this time it can be written by those who believe that the future belongs not to those who leave, but to those who dare to build. Maybe the true story of Africa's brain drain isn't one of loss, but of awakening, because every person who leaves carries a piece of Africa with them, a story, a rhythm, a heartbeat that never fades. And every person who stays becomes the keeper of that light, holding it high for the next generation to see. The world may measure Africa by the number of its people who have left, but the truth is, you cannot drain a continent whose soul refuses to give up. For every dream that leaves, a new one is born. For every voice that fades abroad, another rises at home, stronger and louder. The real revolution is not in migration, it's in transformation. It's in the young minds refusing to be silenced, in the leaders who choose integrity over greed, and in the communities that still believe that tomorrow can be better than today. So yes, Africa's brightest may have scattered across the world, but like stars in the night sky, they still shine for the same home. And one day, when the time is right, those stars may find their way back, bringing with them the light that can change everything, because Africa's story is not over. It is only just beginning. And when the continent finally realizes that its true wealth is not buried in the ground, but living in the hearts of its people, then and only then will Africa rise to its destiny. This is not the end of Africa's story, it's the beginning of her return. Thank you for watching. If you believe in Africa's strength, resilience, and future, please like this video, share it with others, and subscribe for more stories that keep Africa's light alive.